You've been told heaven is light, joy, and eternal peace. But that's not how the Book of Enoch begins. The seventh heaven isn't a place of singing angels or glowing clouds. It's a forbidden realm, a place even the mightiest seraphim fear to enter. And according to the ancient scrolls, it's where God himself has hidden, away from all creation, not to be worshipped, but to judge. Now imagine this: a veil of golden fire, thicker than time, separating you from something so holy that even the angels cover their faces and fall silent. That's the seventh heaven. That's the top. That's the end of the road. But why does it feel wrong? The truth is, the terror doesn't begin with hell. It ends with heaven. You heard that right. Because in the Book of Enoch, the most dreadful place isn't below but above, beyond the stars, above the firmament, where watchers tremble and decisions are made not about humans but about angels. The seventh heaven is a courtroom, a tribunal, and you were never meant to go there. But that raises a disturbing question. If that's the end of the journey, what lies beneath it? Why did God divide heaven into layers at all? And what happened in those lower levels before the final throne was sealed away? Let's go backwards. Rewind the vision. Start from the dazzling gates of the seventh heaven, where seraphim cry, "Holy, holy, holy," and rewind. Back through the flames, back through the crystal sea, back through the great curtain of dimensions, and down to a different place, the first heaven, where it all began. But before we descend, you need to understand one thing. What we call heaven is not one place. It's 10. Yes, 10. According to Enoch, heaven is layered like a temple. Each layer has a function, a guardian, a danger, and only 2 of them are accessible to humanity. The rest? They were built to contain beings more powerful and more rebellious than you were ever told existed. The 7th is the highest, but it's not where humans are welcomed. It's where verdicts are delivered. On spirits, on angels, on the very forces that once stood before the face of God and dared to question his order. So let me ask you, if heaven is divided, what was God trying to separate? And why? Let me take you back. Not just back in time, but back in heaven. Because while modern churches tell you to look forward to paradise, the ancient texts warn, you can't understand salvation without understanding rebellion. And rebellion didn't begin on earth. It began just below the throne. It began when a voice said, "Why him? Why not me?" That voice was once the brightest of all stars, Lucifer, a name that means bearer of light. And what happened next was not a fall. It was a war. But not yet. Not at the top. It began far below. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to descend one layer at a time, back through the dimensions heaven doesn't want you to remember, back through the layers that were sealed off, because what they held could never be allowed to rise again, back to the layer where souls are weighed, back to the layer where watchers were bound, back to the layer where God whispered for the first time, "Let there be light," and darkness whispered back, "Why?" Let's begin at the end. The 7th heaven is silent now. The flames are still. The throne is hidden. But long ago, something rose from beneath. A question. A challenge. A moment of envy. And everything fell. You've seen the ending. Now let's uncover the secret hidden in the foundation. Are you ready to go deeper? Because in the next few minutes, we're going to peel back the sky and reveal a truth that's been erased from the pulpits. You've been told heaven is the reward. But what if I told you it's the battlefield? Let the descent begin. You've seen the 7th heaven, the hidden throne, the sacred silence, the judgment seat of God. But now we step downward, not away from holiness but closer to the origins of everything that went wrong. We begin our descent into the layered architecture of heaven. Because to truly understand why God hides behind veils of glory, you must first uncover what was buried beneath them. The 6th heaven is not peace. It is not joy. It is intelligence, pure blinding intelligence. Here, archangels record history before it happens. Here, the fates of kings are etched into books that bleed light. But this is also the realm where the Watchers were first warned. The same Watchers who later descended to earth and defiled humanity by taking wives from among them. Why were they in heaven at all? According to the Book of Enoch, the 6th heaven was a realm of divine scribes. Angels who studied the blueprints of creation, the codes of life, the architecture of time. But among them were rebels, beings who saw the beauty of mankind and envied it, who read the names of every soul that would ever be born, and chose to intervene, to disrupt, to play God. You've heard of the Nephilim, giants, monsters, but few know their origins begin in this realm. And it was here in the sixth heaven that the first pact was made, not in darkness but in light, a promise spoken in whispers. We will go down, we will take them, we will teach them secrets they were never meant to know. The angels fell, but before the fall there was intention. Descending to the fifth heaven, things grow colder, dimmer. Here lies the prison of the watchers. It is not hell, but it is worse than death, because these are not demons. These are angels, bound in chains of starlight, condemned to gaze upward forever toward the heaven they lost. And why were they punished? Because they loved? Because they lusted? Or because they broke the hierarchy God established? Enoch says they taught mankind forbidden arts, weaponry, sorcery, astrology, enchantments. And women were changed, men were corrupted. But the punishment wasn't just for what they did, it was for what they knew. Because hidden in the fifth heaven is a vault of secrets, truths only angels should understand. Why did God allow them to fall? Why didn't He stop them? The answer is terrifying, because the test wasn't for them, it was for us, you. And then comes the fourth heaven, a strange place, a place of duality. One side is radiant, filled with hymns and the glory of those who passed the trials of earth. But the other side, shadows. This is the realm of the moon and the sun, of time and tide. It watches the earth like a mirror, and every sin echoes here. This is the heaven that watches, not intervenes, watches. And now we reach the third. This is where souls are sorted, not judged but prepared, where spirits wait, some in comfort, others in fire. Not quite heaven, not quite hell, a middle world. And in its heart stands a mountain, burning without flame. And on that mountain is a gate only open for those who are clean, not in body but in intention. It is here, according to Enoch, that Abraham was shown his future, that Elijah was lifted in fire, that Moses glimpsed the glory of God. But they didn't reach the seventh, not even the sixth. They stopped here. Ask yourself why? Because the higher realms aren't about comfort, they're about purpose, and not every soul is ready for that. Now we descend again to the second heaven. This is the sky of storms, of lightning and thunder, of voices crying out in rebellion. The demons of chaos live here, not Satan but powers, principalities, spirits that rage against the plan. It is a realm in conflict, not because God lost control but because free will was never meant to be easy. And finally, the first, the closest to earth, the heaven you see when you look up, the clouds, the stars, the vast dome, but also the gateway, because every soul that ever lived passed through here. Every prayer, every cry, every praise, it all echoes in the first heaven. And it is here, not the seventh, where your name is first spoken, where your story begins. So you see, heaven isn't a place, it's a path. And the seventh? That's not the destination, that's the verdict. But now here's the twist. Hidden in the layering of these realms is a structure, not a staircase up but a filter down. God placed each level not as a hierarchy, but as a refining fire. And those who seek Him must pass through understanding, sacrifice, temptation, separation, surrender, and finally silence. The seventh heaven is not a reward, it is a reckoning. And yet, humanity was never meant to reach it, not yet. Because something is waiting there. A question, a throne, a judge. And now that you've seen the path in reverse, let me ask, why do you think it's been hidden? Why is the Book of Enoch not in your Bible? Why do modern churches speak of heaven as if it's all harps and halos, when the ancient prophets warned, do not look lightly upon the throne, for its fire consumes even angels? What else haven't they told you? And what happens next, if you choose to keep climbing? You've walked backward through the heavens, step by step, layer by layer, peeling back the illusions. But now we stop, not to rest, to confront, because everything we've uncovered leads to one terrifying conclusion. The seventh heaven is not paradise. It is a courtroom, and the silence there is not peace. It is judgment held in suspense. And seated at the center is not a father waiting to embrace. It is a king preparing a verdict. This is the truth the early church fathers feared you would know. That God's throne is not the finish line of your faith. It is the beginning of your reckoning. The prophets who saw it fell as though dead. Isaiah cried out that his lips were unclean. Ezekiel collapsed beneath the wheels of fire. And John the beloved trembled at the sight of the throne surrounded by lightning and voices and creatures that never stopped crying out, "Holy, holy, holy." But let me tell you what they didn't say aloud. What the Book of Enoch dares to record. There is a tribunal in the seventh heaven. Not for men. For angels. Yes, angels are judged too. And it was here, before the world was formed, that Lucifer stood and heard a decree that shattered eternity. A voice from the throne said, "This is my son in whom I am well pleased." But that voice wasn't directed at Lucifer. It was spoken to Jesus. And in that moment a star turned dark. A heart turned jealous. And heaven cracked at the edge. Lucifer's fall didn't begin on earth. It didn't begin in Eden. It began in the seventh heaven, where he was forced to witness the coronation of one higher than himself. And he couldn't bear it. You think rebellion starts with rage? No. Starts with envy. And the seventh heaven is where envy sees perfection and breaks itself against it. But what if I told you this was not an accident? That God knew? That the proclamation to the Son was meant to expose what was already hidden in the angelic host? Then everything shifts. The rebellion wasn't a surprise. It was a trigger. A separation. Like fire drawn across gold, burning away the alloy. And Lucifer, once the guardian of the throne, was the first to melt under the heat of glory. Now look again at the story of Job. Satan appears before God. Not in hell, not outside, but in heaven. And God says, "Where have you come from?" Do you really think he didn't know? That's not a question for information. That's a legal summons. A trial is being set. Job becomes the courtroom. The earth becomes the witness stand. And you, dear listener, you are the jury whether you realize it or not. Because every soul carries this same echo. Every soul is placed between the worship of heaven and the accusation of the enemy. And every choice you make is evidence. Evidence in a trial that didn't begin with you, but may end with you. Let that sink in. The structure of heaven isn't about reward. It's about revelation. The higher you ascend, the more is revealed about God, yes, but also about yourself. And that's why most people never go beyond the first heaven. They want beauty, not truth. They want comfort, not confrontation. They want heaven without the king. But there is no throne without fire. There is no crown without a courtroom. Now let's return to the angelic rebellion. The war in heaven wasn't a spontaneous riot. It was a strategic betrayal. And it began in the silence of the seventh. Not with swords, but with silence. Lucifer said nothing. He just left. And others followed, not because they hated God, but because they feared losing themselves. That is the root of all rebellion. Fear of being forgotten. And now I must ask you something no pastor dares to. What if you've carried that fear too? What if deep down you've wondered whether God truly sees you? Whether your worship matters, whether your prayers rise past the ceiling. If so, you've stood where Lucifer stood. And that's not to condemn you. That's to warn you. Because the line between the worshiper and the rebel is thinner than we admit. It's not drawn in behavior. It's drawn in desire. So here's the twist. God allowed the rebellion to expose hearts. Not just in heaven. On earth. In you. The layers of heaven aren't just locations. They're reflections. Each level mirrors a stage of your own soul. From the chaos of the second heaven to the sorting of the third, to the silence of the seventh, your journey is mapped in the sky. And now that you know this, you must choose how to walk. You can ignore it. You can pretend heaven is simple and hell is for others and you're fine because you believe the right words. Or you can prepare to ascend. But be warned. To ascend is to be unmade. Because when you reach the seventh heaven, the throne will not ask what you did. It will ask what you desired. And no lie survives there. Now breathe. Let the silence of that question settle into your bones. What did you desire? Not just with your hands or your lips, but with your soul. Because when the courtroom of the seventh heaven opens, nothing stays hidden. Not even intentions. And this is why so few teachings ever dare speak of the full map of heaven. Because it's not about reward. It's about responsibility. And not everyone wants that weight. But you've made it here. And so you must know what the ancient texts whisper, the final truth drawn in golden fire behind the veil, that the war in heaven never truly ended. It simply changed battlegrounds. That the same courtroom where Lucifer fell is still open, still watching. And now it's not angels who stand accused. It's us. Look again at the beginning of this journey. The light, the throne, the scrolls in the sixth heaven, the cries of the chained watchers, the mourning spirits trapped between hope and loss, the Eden split into glory and judgment, the veiled stars whispering secrets no man dares translate. All of it was never meant to be a mystery. It was meant to be a mirror. Because the real terror of the seventh heaven is not that God is hiding from us. It's that He's been watching us all along. And now the circle closes. Do you remember that first image, Satan cast down, screaming as the gates of fire close above him? Now you understand why. It wasn't rage. It was rejection. The courtroom didn't end his existence. It revealed it. And now your soul stands where he once stood. So let me ask you, if today were the trial, what would be written next to your name in the scroll? You see, you're not just a bystander in this celestial design. You're the verdict. That's what no preacher ever told you. That heaven was never just about getting in. It was about whether you'd reflect the Son or reject him. And that reflection doesn't come from belief alone. Comes from transformation. So I must challenge you. Right now. Not with threats. But with truth. Have you envied? Have you hesitated to trust that God's love is enough? Have you clung to the illusion that you can live on your own terms and still ascend through the fire? If so, know this. Heaven isn't afraid of your weakness. It's afraid of your silence. Your refusal to confront yourself. Because silence is how Lucifer fell. Not with a scream, but with a shrug. And that is the seed of damnation. Now the courtroom grows quiet again. The accuser is present. The angels wait. The scroll is open. And your name is echoing through the hall. But before the judgment falls, one final light breaks through the heavens. It is the voice of the Lamb. He stands not as your prosecutor, but your advocate. And he speaks one sentence that reshapes eternity. This one is mine. Not because you were perfect, but because you chose to kneel, to confess, to let go of envy, to rise again in grace. And that is how heaven opens. So now hear me clearly. If you've watched this far, it's not by accident. God is calling you to remember who you are. Not a pawn, not a product of chaos, but a witness, a child, a warrior in a war older than time. Comment Jesus wins if you are ready to walk the spiral in truth. And if your soul trembled even once during this video, don't run from that. Run toward it. Because trembling is how heaven begins. This isn't the end. It's your invitation.